Hey guys, Michael from 90 Plus GAMSAT coming at you again with another video. This time on what to do in the last month, and in particular breaking down the last kind of 3 weeks, the last week and the day. Let's get into it. So guys, how you are able to perform and how you actually do perform are not the same thing. I've seen so many capable students absolutely kill it before the exam. They can write a good essay, they can do questions to time, but they just crumble on the day. So today we're going to be dealing with what are some things you can do from my experience, both in personal success and endeavors that I've had in my life, but also in tutoring literally thousands of students over the past many years on how you can insulate yourself from having troubles like that. So let's begin with the next 3 weeks, which is to say, if there's 1 month to go, 4 weeks, what do you do in the first 3 weeks versus that last week before the GAMSAT? First, I'd recommend that you begin to regulate sleep patterns. Oftentimes, as we study, we get accustomed to studying a bit late, but the GAMSAT typically is at 8 in the morning. They have sometimes 2 sessions, but in any case, since you don't know what yours is yet, or your ticket hasn't come out yet, if I were you, I would start bringing back my sleep by 30 minutes every day. You'd like to aim, if it's I suppose it depends on where you live, but you'd like to be getting up with enough time to slowly wake. Don't want to be like getting up and reacting to the day. You want to consciously respond to the day in power, which means get up and get in a habit of what you do over the next every day. You kind of want it to be Groundhog Day, so you're on familiar ground on the day. So if you could wake up with half an hour, 45 minutes to have a coffee, chill, get your composure, meditate, maybe listen to some binaural beats, that would be a good thing to do. Okay. 2. Focus on consolidating and integrating your information. So there are 3 phases to digestion of food or of information. There's ingestion, digestion, and elimination. So you're probably ingesting quite a lot, but there's a limit to the amount you can ingest without digesting. So ensure that you're digesting all of the information that you need. That means going for long walks or consciously soaking in a bathtub. You need to be able to step back from what you're doing and the stress of it and just kind of sit with it. An analogy I give is, imagine you've got like a riverbank and you come in and the intention is to kind of shake up the way that you currently understand the world to be or understand success to be in order that you can rebuild it in a higher scoring way. But if you kind of shake it up, the water's all murky and then things will congeal in new and novel and hopefully better ways and then sediment back down, leaving crystal clear waters. But if you keep coming in and shaking that up, again, you've got murky water and it's not an effective process. In other words, you need to ingest and then consciously digest. Okay. And then also that includes thinking about what about the old way that I did it is no longer useful to me. So how can I eliminate the old? All right. Tip 3. So regarding section 2, you'd like to mind map. So what a mind map does is it basically puts all of the major themes that you think are likely to come up for GAMSAT, or all of the main themes that you notice are repeating in your ideas bank if you've got one, and starting to map out the relationships between those ideas. And you can bring in ideas from, for example, the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, or Renovatio by Zaytuna College. The essays from there are a great academic source of literature. And then opinion sections from like The Guardian, The New York Times, The Quadrant, and then insights from podcasts like The Minefield. And you start to kind of congregate those insights that you have and things that you like to say around the headings, which are key themes. And then the more you try and kind of map out the relationships between those ideas, the more agile you'll be on the day. Because rather than having to come up with relationships between your ideas, you've already got them there. All right. Tip 4. So try returning to old questions from section 1 or 3 that you had previously scored poorly on or that you hadn't gotten correct, and see if you've noticed any uplift. I'd recommend not doing this in kind of the very last half of the last month, so maybe do it kind of now with 4 weeks to go. That gives you time to still accommodate and adjust for any ones that you get wrong again, or if you haven't noticed the kind of uplift you want to seek out some kind of help, tutoring or something like that. Doing it just before the exam is a bit high risk, because if you do it well, that's great, you got a confidence boost, but if you didn't, you could possibly be bringing a mindset issue into the exam. So be careful about that. You also might like to use the ASA Online Section 2 essay generator and seeing how that goes, but again, please don't do that closer to the exam. Do it with enough time to make any changes that need to be made. All right, idea 5. So my recommendation is that you meditate on accepting all outcomes. You can't be powerful around a situation if you can't accept all possible outcomes. That includes absolutely flunking. So whatever it is, that thing that you're maybe worried about, whether it's showing up and freaking out on the day or having mind blank or things just not going well, until you're okay with getting a 20 or a 30, you're not going to be able to score in the upper echelons. Because scoring highly at GAMSAT requires agility, and agility is preceded by, or it requires flow rather. Flow is preceded by agility. Agility is preceded by relaxation. Relaxation is preceded by stance. Stance is preceded by foundation, which comes from balance or from study. So when you have a foundation, as you've done some things before, you can kind of, stand strong on that foundation. And from there, you're able to relax. You can't be relaxed if you're just all over the shop. When you're relaxed, you're more agile. When you're more agile, you can flow. In order to have that agility and flow, you need to have that relaxation. And the thing that's unrelaxing you is the fear that you're not going to be able to get where you need to go, or that you're going to muck it up. You need to be able to let that go so that you can be relaxed. And it's kind of like, it's ironic. It's almost the opposite. It's like a Chinese finger trap. The more you pull away, the more it tightens on you. What you resist persists. So when you're fearful of not doing well, when you're resisting it, ironically, that makes that very thing happen. You need to be able to accept that this is going to happen, not in your time, but in God's time, or the universe's time, or karma's time, or whatever works for you. Another thing about that is, for you more science-oriented people, you might like to consider the relationship between pressure, force, and area. So pressure is force on area. Heuristically, if I push down on your head with, say, 10 newtons of force, it's probably not going to really hurt. But what if I put a really, really sharp nail in between my hand and your head? Now all of that force is concentrated on that tiny tip of that nail. It's going to cut, right? Well, you could say similarly that the amount of stress you feel is proportional to the, or equals, the amount that you have to do divided by the time you have to do it. If you shrink the time that you allow yourself to do it, it's got to be this sitting. What you're doing is, as you know, if you shrink the bottom of a fraction, the whole fraction increases, stress is going to increase. Right? Imagine at your job, if your boss said, hey, all that stuff you have to do by the end of the week, I need it done by 5. You'd stress out. Well, stress means less relaxation, less agility, less flow, and it causes the outcome that you don't want. But what if conversely you said, look, I'd like it to be September, I'm going to do everything I can to make it September, but I'm going to let go of the result. And if it needs to take 10 sittings, it's going to take 10 sittings. Well, as we know, is if you increase the denominator of a fraction, the fraction as a whole decreases. And as the time you allow yourself approaches infinity, stress approaches 0. Well, when you're not stressed, you can relax. When you relax, you can flow. And that creates the outcome that you want. Tip number 6. Recognize that if God, the universe, karma, whatever works for you, wants this for you, there's literally nothing you could do to muck it up. You couldn't possibly, even if you tried. It's helpful with GAMSAT, and success in general, to frame things in ways that are empowering to you. And one of the ways that you can do that is by realizing that there are other things than us that have a hand in the choices that are presented to us and what happens in our life. Now, whether you are theistically inclined or not, there's a parable here that might help. There's a man that comes to a priest and says, I have free will. And the priest says, do you? Okay, pluck the apple from the tree. So he does. And the priest says, that was your choice. And then the man, my apologies, the priest says to the man, now put it back. The man says, I can't. And so the priest says, that's God's choice. The point here is that if you had full free will, you'd be able to be a doctor right now. That's not one of the choices that you have available to you. The choice you have available to you right now is study or not study for the GAMSAT, or go eat that meal or that meal. There are forces outside our controls that present to us a series of choices among which we choose. But it's by that mechanism that we're being guided down the kinds of roads that I guess life or the universe has in store for us. I guess that does depend in part on your belief, but nevertheless, for those for whom that fits, that's something that I personally found strength in. And also the recognition that it works conversely. If this isn't the right sitting for me, there's not really anything I can do. And that doesn't mean don't do anything, don't try. But it does mean have faith that there are benevolent forces creating those decisions for you. It might be that the love of your life is in the next sitting, not this one. If you guys are finding this information helpful, consider picking up my book, 1 Month to Go. It is a 28-page manual that distills down $100,000 of personal development on myself over 10 years into a manual that is written to show you how I went about my last month before the GAMSAT, including the last week and the last day, which resulted in my getting 91 in Section 2, the highest score of that sitting, and 82 overall. Essays aren't the first thing that I've put my mind to and been successful at. In fact, I wasn't really that good when I started. I was only getting in the 60s. But you learn over time some common patterns which you can use to be successful, not just at GAMSAT, but really anywhere in life. Feel free to grab a copy. I will put a link up there if I can figure out how to do it. If not, in the description. All right, now we're talking about the last week. So tip number 7, stop. Just stop. As I mentioned earlier, we've got the ingestion, digestion, and elimination. You need to allow time for kind of everything that you've done before to just digest and settle. You've probably ingested an enormous amount of information over the past however many months of study. And it's important in the exam that you are as mentally free and refreshed as possible to attack the task. As we've mentioned, GAMSAT is a task of agility, and in order to be agile, you need to have, you know, the RAM of a computer, like random access memory, the working memory. Like if you've got 100 tabs of Chrome open and everything just slows down. You're kind of like that in your mind. You've got all these tabs open from all the study you've been doing, but that's inimical, which means not useful to your succeeding in the GAMSAT. You need to close all those tabs down, stop, just relax, and that allows you to be mentally free enough to generate the kind of psychological and intellectual resources to fully devote yourself to the task on the day with the necessary analytic focus. So just stop. I'd also recommend to turn your phone off in the few days before. If there's a crisis, you can perhaps deal with it after the exam. All right, tip 8. Spend some time with friends and find enjoyment. You need to be able to have fun in the task in order to be successful in it. That means fun in the week before to kind of replenish your resources, but also it means fun in the exam. And I'm kind of sneaking ahead here, but I recall, for example, in my section 1, there was a STEM and it had 2 characters speaking to each other. I think it was a king and a knight or something. And in my mind, I was going, like in the voices to just have a little bit of a laugh with myself. And I was like, best get back to it now. And then I did. Having fun, it kind of puts the GAMSAT in the proper perspective. You know, I tried to approach the day as if the GAMSAT wasn't the biggest thing happening that day. I was like, what am I going to do later? The reason is, imagine a boxer. You might train and you train the jab and the right and the cross and the way you step, and then you're all practiced, and then on the day you get there and the guy's huge and you freak out and you start doing everything different and then you get beat up. You don't want it to be like that. You've got to keep chill and let it just be something that's either for you, not for you, and in particular something that you can have fun with. So try and find enjoyment. All right. 9. Let it go. I know it's hard. But there's a very real sense in which the GAMSAT is testing things that are built over a lifetime. And while there's certainly many things you can do to improve, there's nothing that you can do in the last week except relax. I remember a quote from Muhammad Ali, I think before he fought George Fraser, and it was something like, the fight's already over. We're just, we're coming to the event to just watch the last few months of preparation play out. But it's decided not tonight. It was decided months ago on the road at 4 a.m. against the boxing bag. What he's saying there is that what we're really just seeing it on the day is it's kind of like a wave of energy, and you're just surfing a wave of energy of months or years or a lifetime of accumulated action and thoughts. So the best thing is to ride the wave, or you'll end up under it. Okay, but it's going to go the way it's going. Another way to think about it is, I remember in year 12, my coordinator had a bit of advice for us, and he said, look, the exams is just, it's kind of like sitting down in the middle of a game of chess. You've got the pieces, you do. You don't have the pieces, you don't. There's nothing you can do about that, but you can still enjoy the game and play and try and maximize your position. So try and recognize that it's kind of done. You know what you know, you don't what you don't, but it's still possible to have fun and just play a little game with yourself and go, I wonder how good I could do with what I've got. And that's something that really helped me. Before we move on to the day of the GAMSAT and what to do on that very last day, please like this video just down below and share it with your friends, your study buddies, your study groups. Be a good friend, because they've put a lot into this just as you have, and there's possibly something in this video, just that one thing that'll click for them and that will insulate them from a mindset issue that might otherwise have developed. So go ahead and copy the link and share it amongst all your groups. Lastly, we are up to the day of the GAMSAT. Tip 10, wake up early. All right, don't wake up reacting to the day like, oh, what am I going to do? I would literally recommend on the week before to travel to the venue every day. I knew it was 27 minutes walk with about 2 minutes variance from my place to the venue. I did it every single day. In fact, I ate the same thing at the same time every day. It was just like Groundhog Day. I did not want that day to be the first time I'd done anything. I even would walk to the venue and I imagine walking in, sitting down, feeling the seat under my bum, putting my hand on the mouse, them saying begin. It was just like Groundhog Day. All right. Point 11, don't hang out with anybody else. People are going to be stressing. Be the last person in, stand at the opposite side of the road. Yeah, just you don't want to be in that kind of nervous tension energy. It's not going to help you. All right, point 12. Pretend each question is the first question. You might have mucked up a question before. You know, I often hear students, the first couple of questions are really, really hard and they kind of freak out and then it throws the whole thing. You've just got to be able to reset every question. The next one along, 13, don't get bogged down in a STEM. So what I mean by that is there's often stems that are deliberately wordy or that are requiring a lot of time from you, or just ones where you feel that if I just give it a little bit more, I'll get there. But you need to be kind of like a computer about the test. You just need to be cold and calculated and analytical. Right? You just do not have time. You have a set amount of time for each part. So you've really got to move on if you don't get it. And the last 2 points, 14 and 15, to start with 14, realize that 20% of the questions actually aren't even contributing to your mark. ACE are just testing them for next time to make sure there's no kind of discrimination on the basis of age or gender or anything like that. So if I ever got to a question where I was like, oh, I don't know about this one, I would just say to myself, this one's not marked anyway, whatever, let's move on. Okay. And then very last, and I've said this before, but stop and joke with yourself. Constantly work to put the exam in its place, which is to say, don't let it be this big, scary thing. It's something that you've put a lot of effort into, but as we discussed earlier, the time for being able to change any of that has gone. So the best thing you can do is to have fun. If you're having fun with yourself, it's a good metric by which you can judge your relaxation and therefore, as we said earlier, agility and flow. All right. Guys, I hope that helps. I've had a lot of fun actually making this video and I think it's going to be super useful to you. So thank you so much. I'm going to try and upload a bit more regularly here. If you want to hear more, please subscribe. And like I said, share and like, but otherwise, peace.